listen to me, lads. Listen to me, boys. Jones, you can't get away with this. If you refuse to work this ship, then it's mutiny. Mutiny on the high seas.
Then see that we're allowed ashore at Papeete, Mr. Cregan.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Now look, Jones. Jones, you really don't care a hoot about going ashore at Papeete. And you know it, and I know it. This is only an excuse to get out of doing your duty. I'm ordering you back to work now. If I have to send for the skipper, you're going to regret this. Every last man of ye.
When the quartermaster came racing up to the bridge to inform the skipper that there was trouble in the engine room, that Seaman Jones was leading a gang of stokers who'd refused to work the ship any longer, Goddard sent for the second officer to take over the watch, and we raced below. By midday, we were due in Papeete to bunker for the run to Panama. But the skipper and I knew we'd be detained there, while the police investigated the deaths of Miller and Blake. Cregan had warned me to expect trouble from the men unless the unknown killer aboard the Tangmar was found. But this was something new. A near mutiny because no shore leave was to be allowed at Papeete. It looked to me as if Seaman Jones had decided to settle some old scores. In the engine room, we found Chief Engineer Cregan pleading with his men to return to duty.
All right, let's have it. Who's the ringleader, Cregan?
I am, Skipper, but don't get any ideas. You're not taking it out on me. We're standing together. That right, boys?
Jonesy. Is that so?
And we won't mind talking with you, Skipper. Might get somewhere, but we don't want that slimy copper down here. Right, men?
Right. Mr. Kendall to you, Blickhorn.
He ain't no first officer, sir. We know all about him. Jones told us the whole story. Spying on us, asking questions, trying to pin the murders on us, he is.
And because he ain't a good enough copper to find the killer, we're expected to lose our shore leave. Well, it ain't good enough, Skipper.
Now look, Jones, I'm going to...
Hold it, Cregan. I'll handle this. So you refuse to work the ship unless I allow you all ashore at Papeete, is that it?
It is.
Yeah. Mr. Cregan, is it necessary that we go to Papeete? Could we make Panama without bunkering there?
Aye, we could, but...
You're sure of that, Mr. Cregan?
But Skipper, we've got to go to Papeete, and you know it.
And I fully intend to, Mr. Kendall, much as I wanted to bypass it. But you can see what we're up against as well as I can. Jones, I'm the only man on this ship who gives the orders. And I'm ordering you now to return to your duty. Is that clear?
Supposing we don't want to do that, Skipper.
Yeah.
The rest of you feel the same way?
Yeah. There's a jinx on the Tangmar, Skipper.
Yeah.
There's been 2 murders, and they ain't been solved. Well, I'm leaving the Tangmar in Papeete, and that's all there is to it.
And those of us who ain't leaving are going ashore when we feel like it. I got friends in Papeete, Skipper.
Shut up, you lazy, trouble-making lower-deck rat. We're not going to Papeete, Jones. Does that settle the first part of your complaint?
Now, wait a minute.
Mr. Cregan thinks we can make Panama without bunkering, and that's what we're going to do. I'm not running the risk of any one of you leaving the ship. To get this voyage over, I need a crew. I've got one, of a sort. Even though, looking at this bunch of frightened old women, I find that hard to believe.
And I say we're either going to Papeete or nowhere.
Is that so? Well, first off, I want to tell the rest of you the kind of man you've been listening to. The kind of murderer's dog you've allowed to sway you away from your duty. Do you know why Jones is making trouble? Oh, it isn't because he's on your side. It's because since the night he attacked Mr. Kendall with a knife, I've seen that he's been too darn busy to take a knife to anyone again.
What? What are you talking about, Skipper?
Just ask Mr. Kendall there.
It's a lie, and I can prove it.
The skipper's right, men. Jones discovered that I was an Interpol agent and tried to stab me in the back. Just a few nights after we left port. Then he tried to claim the skipper had put him up to it.
You're a rotten liar, Kendall. I'm going to kill you now. You stinking copper.
Get him apart, men.
No, skipper. Keep back. You started this, Jones. And this time I can see you.
Wait, move, yeah, keep back there, lads. Keep back. Like that.
I should have finished you that first time. But this time there'll be no mistake.
You're on your own, Jones. Just you and me. And you've had this coming for a long time. Oh, don't say you've had enough. Do I have to hold you up? Come on, man, fight. Get up, Jones.
Let him be, Dirk. He's all through. You, Blinkhorn, get Jones out of here. I want him in the brig. He'll spend the rest of the boys there.
Oh, listen, Skipper.
You shut up. The rest of you get back to work. Do you understand? There'll be no more talk of mutiny aboard my ship. And we're making for Panama, so you can forget Papete. Mr. Cregan, I want you on the bridge as soon as convenient. We'll need to check our supplies of fuel.
You can say that again. I think you made the right decision, Skipper. Our job is to get this ship to Jamaica. I don't reckon we could sail it there without a crew.
Well, at least Jones solved one problem for you, Skipper. If it means losing your crew, you can make for Jamaica with an easy conscience.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you're disappointed, Kendall.
I'm not really. I've been after this killer too long to want anyone else to make the arrest.
But I don't understand, Dr. Lawler. I understood we were to be in Papeete midday, and here it is, slightly after 2.
We're not going to Papeete. Hadn't you heard? The skipper's decided to head straight for Panama and then Jamaica.
But why? Surely we should have been consulted and...
Mr. Tuker, you're overlooking one thing. We're supposed to arrive in Jamaica on the 21st of September in order to collect our shares of the Wetherman estate. I understand from the captain that if we put into Papeete, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
I fail entirely to see why not.
Oh, well, it's simple enough. There have been 2 murders on this ship. We'd have been held up by investigations and heaven knows what else. Yes, the skipper even doubted that we'd have a crew left.
You mean to say that it actually deserts the ship?
I dare say. The crew are just as frightened as we are, you know.
What have they got to be frightened about, anyway?
Yes, I see what you mean. But Lee Blake wasn't the beneficiary, was he? That didn't prevent his death.
Well, I don't seem to be nearly as frightened as I was. Do you know that?
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
After all, it's easy enough to make quite certain that one is with somebody else for most of the time here.
Is that why you came to my cabin?
Yes. As a matter of fact, you guessed right. Yes, it is. The major and his daughter are up on deck, you see.
Yes, well, would you care for a drink?
A drink? Oh, no, thanks. By the way, did you happen to hear about the fight, Dr. Lawler?
The fight? Oh, yes, I heard about the fight. I understand Mr. Kendall gave a pretty good account of himself.
I see no need at any time for that sort of violence, you know. It's so unnecessary.
It's just possible that kind of violence might be needed to save someone's life on this ship. Have you thought of that?
Oh, no, I hadn't. Of course, in circumstances like that, it's different, I suppose. But still, as a general rule, I must say that, well, it's not really a very gentlemanly pastime, is it? You must agree with that. I mean, fighting with a crew, it's not gentlemanly, is it?
Tuka, I don't want to remind you of something you'd undoubtedly rather forget, but how would you say it compared with, we'll say, poisoning as a gentlemanly pastime?
Poisoning? Oh, that. Well, Dr. Thorne, I think if you don't mind, perhaps I will have that drink after all.
I had to come and find you, Dirk. I thought when I heard there'd been a fight, I thought you might have been hurt.
Well, my jaw feels a little belongs to something else, that's all. And I told you before that...
Dirk Kendall, if you're going to warn me about my father again, don't bother. Yes. Surprising as it may seem, he didn't say anything.
I don't know. Is that good?
Well, let's forget about Father. Dirk, I want you to tell me why we're not calling it Pepite.
Skipper's orders.
Oh? Is that all you have to say?
No, there's a number of reasons for it, but...
Well, it's common talk, so you don't have to be so secretive.
Common talk? What is?
That the men were going to mutiny, and that you and Captain Goddard were afraid the ship would be delayed in Pepite. I'm glad you weren't hurt, Dirk.
So am I.
Dirk, when this is over, I mean, when the Tangmar reaches Jamaica and the Wherryman estate is settled, will you be going back to England?
When I find the killer I'm looking for, I suppose so, yes.
Dirk, do you have to be so, well, stodgy? What I'm trying to say is...
Sharon, if you're in England, I'll be glad to go back.
You mean it, then?
Dirk!
Why does Dr. Lawler have to show up now?
A message from Major Challoner, Dirk. He'd like to see you in his cabin now. I'd say the old... Oh, pardon me, Miss Challoner. I'd say he's pretty worked up about something.
I'd been waiting for my next encounter with Major Challoner ever since Sharon mentioned that she'd told him she was coming to look for me. The ship steamed east-northeast from Tahiti, bound for Panama, as I went below. Major Challoner was prepared for a final showdown in this passage of the Tangmar.
Course east-northeast, Skipper.
Thanks, Quartermaster. I'll take the wheel myself for a spell. Might help us.
The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
I sent for you, Kendall, because this time I'm not asking, I'm not suggesting. I am telling you that if you don't stay away from my daughter, I'll personally see that you do not reach Jamaica alive.
Dr. Lawler had been right. The Major was in a worse temper than I'd ever seen him, which for Challoner was saying quite a lot. I'd been on deck talking with Sharon Challoner when I'd received the message that her father wanted to see me at once in his cabin. I'd told Sharon to stay on deck with Lawler and gone below. It was mid-afternoon of the day we'd been scheduled to bunker at Pepite, but now Tahiti was behind us, as the Tangmar headed toward Panama and Jamaica. I couldn't blame Goddard for his decision to bypass Pepite. It was obvious that the only way of keeping the crew aboard was to remain at sea, at least until I'd located the killer who sailed with us. Anyway, we could always bunker at another port if we had to. At least it meant that I had another 2 weeks or more to track down the murderer of Miller at Leave Lake. And, of course, 2 weeks of protecting the passengers. And a very angry Major Challoner. Look, Major, threatening me doesn't solve anything.
I'm not merely threatening, Kendall. I mean it. I will not have you even talking with Sharon.
And just how do you propose to prevent it?
With this, if I have to.
You leave me no option, Challoner. I'll take that gun.
Make one move, Kendall, and I shall blow your head off.
I'm going to take it. Come on, hand it over.
Keep back.
Sorry. The gun, Challoner.
If you're fool enough to try and take it, then take what...
I said give it to me.
Get back!
Thanks, Major. I'll give it back to you when we reach Jamaica.
You're a brave man, Kendall. I could have killed you.
Now, just for the record, Major Challoner, you're going to listen to me. I'm not in the habit of allowing anyone to threaten me, and that includes you. You're not any different to any other passenger on this ship, except that you're a dashed sight more unpleasant than most. I could have you confined to your cabin for the rest of the voyage for this, but I'm not letting it go any further.
I don't ask any favors of you.
Or anyone else, eh? The self-sufficient Major Challoner, who seems to derive his greatest satisfaction in causing trouble. Doesn't it occur to you that I've got enough on my plate at the moment? Wasting time listening to your stupid threats is keeping me from the job I've got to do, to find a murderer.
You won't ever find him.
And what makes you so sure?
Because it's obvious that he's killed for the last time. Now and he wants to cover his tracks.
For Pete's sake, what gives you that idea?
The fact that he or she tried to kill you, filled with that ridiculous bluff of yours that you knew the killer's identity, went to your cabin to see that you never divulged it. Instead, Lee Blake died. But it proves to me you are the only one in danger now. I maintain the rest of us are quite safe.
Doesn't it also occur to you that with me out of the way, the killer would have a free hand? Mightn't that have been the reason for wanting me dead?
I prefer to believe otherwise.
Because you're hoping that I will get mine, is that it?
I don't care what happens to you, provided you keep away from my daughter.
Make one wrong move, Major Challoner, do anything that I can sheet home to you, make one more threat or cause the slightest trouble of any kind, and you'll be confined to this cabin for the rest of the voyage. Is that clear?
I think Captain Goddard would have something to say about that.
He'd back me to the hilt. He loathes the sight of you. You're a loud-mouthed, unpleasant old man, Major. You've caused all the trouble on this ship you're going to. From now on, you either behave or take the consequence.
You have the faintest idea to whom you're talking, Kendall.
Just think it over.
Of course you're looking for an excuse, I realize that. And there'd be nothing to stop you and Sharon.
But for the fact that Sharon Challoner bears your name, I find it hard to believe that she's your daughter.
All right, Kendall. But remember this. I meant what I said. And taking my gun won't stop me. I'll find another way. So if you value your life, stop even talking to Sharon. In the army, when I gave an order, my men knew better than to disregard it. I'm giving you an order now.
Skipper, if you can't keep your mind on the game, why play it? Now watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that, I'd say, is my game, right?
All right, Chief, you win.
You know, inviting me to join in a game of drafts is no fun if you won't concentrate, Skipper.
How can I concentrate? Answer me that. Murders, mutiny. Yeah, I'd like to get hold of that fella Jones and break his neck.
Well, Kendall took care of that for you.
Jones is staying in the brig for the rest of the voyage. It's where he should have been the whole time.
Well, we won't have to worry about him anymore.
Who do you think is the killer, Chief?
I've no idea.
Kendall seems pretty sure it's one of the crew. Even though I've pointed out that I know this crew. I know the kind of men they are, the way they behave in any given circumstances.
That's a big thing to claim, Skipper. You didn't know Jones, for instance.
Jones? I don't regard him as crew. He only joined for this trip.
Oh, you mean the old hands?
Well, wouldn't you vouch for them, Chief?
Not anymore. Not after what's happened aboard this ship. It's getting that way that I don't even trust my own shadow.
Yeah, I know how you feel. Anyway, we've doubled the guards in the companionways for the rest of the trip. We'll have to both take our turn, Cregan.
Aye, well, suits me. You know, it seems that everyone on this ship is watching everyone else. Anyway, how does Kendall know that one of the guards might not be... Well, it could be, couldn't it?
That's why he's using them in threes. Anyway, it's pretty obvious that the killer wouldn't do anything like breaking into the cabins at night. He seems to prefer to wait his time until he can find his victim alone.
Aye. You want to play again?
Yeah, all right, if you like.
You know, maybe you'll play better if we have a small wager on the result, eh?
You know, Cregan, when we find this killer, if we do, I'm going to be hard put to keep my hands off him.
Well, he'll have to take his chance in a court of law, Skipper, and, well, who's to know what it is that drives a man to kill?
You mean you can feel pity for him?
Aye, I can feel pity for anyone who's suffering.
Well, I'll be... All this killer is doing is causing suffering.
Probably. For all I know, he thinks he's got a good reason to kill.
£1 million worth of reason. It's greed, nothing more.
Aye. Aye, well, if it's one of the passengers, then I'd be inclined to agree.
If it is, then you don't think it is either.
Skipper, look, we've sailed together a long time. We understand the sea. You, the skippering, and me, the engines that drive the Tangmar on our way. Now, why don't we stick to that? Murder's way out of your line, that's way out of mine. Leave it to Kendall, it's his job.
Whose move is it?
You. First this time, you first.
I'm beginning to wish I'd never sailed with anything but cargo.
Beginning to? I'd wish that right from the first. You know, people mean trouble, and people who stand to inherit a deal of money make a lot of trouble. For themselves and for others. Greedy, wee, clawing hands reaching out for money they haven't earned by the sweat of their brow. Money they've no right to.
Chief, don't tell me you'd refuse a share of £1 million.
Oh, it's never likely to happen, so I don't know. But I do know when this voyage is over, I never want to hear the name of Werriman again. My wife came into money, and it ruined our marriage. She got ideas above her station. I have seen what money can do to people, and it doesn't surprise me to find they'd kill to get more. Aye, well, make your move, Skipper. Oh, and talking of money, how much you prepared to wager on the result?
Now, it's easy to forget that there is anything wrong up here on the deck, Martin. Easy to forget everything.
You are sure, aren't you?
Surer than I've ever been. And I'm sorry if it seems to have been too fast for you.
I would never have believed it possible.
Well, Martin, anything is possible. Even that you should admit you care for me.
It's not much of a life for you, you know, being a doctor's wife. You'll have to put up with being alone just for the lot.
I've never heard such a romantic proposal.
I should have been able to do better than that.
You have the night to help you. Everything that the romantic novel prescribes. The moon, stars, the water rushing by.
Elona, would you mind very much if I kissed you?
I would mind very much if you did not.
Elona. I never believed it could happen like this. Oh, I love you, Elona. My darling. Elona. I wish I was the kind of smooth-talking character who could, well, you know, go down on his knees and I could tell you that your hair was lovely and that your eyes are like... Well, does pools of moonlight sound too silly?
It sounds wonderful.
I'll be awfully good to you, Elona.
Oh, hold me close, Martin.
Elona.
I will make you a promise now, Martin. Martin. It is such a gentle name. It becomes you. Martin. Dr. Martin Lawler. I promise you that as long as I live, I will work only to make you happy. Thank you for proposing as you did. Doctor's wife. I was never asked to be a wife before. And you said it as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Oh, Martin, no matter what the future holds for us, I shall remember this night forever.
It was quiet on deck. The water swirled past and the engines throbbed. One would never expect death to be a passenger on this passage of the Tangmar.
All right, Kendall, I'll take over the watch. You better get down to the brig and see that wharf rat, Jones. He's asking to talk with you. Says it's a matter of life and death.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Sure, I got something to tell you, Kendall. Something you want to know pretty badly, I reckon. The name of the killer you're looking for. But before I talk, you're getting me out of this hole. Is it a bargain, Kendall?
I'd taken Goddard's advice and gone to the brig to find out what it was that Jones wanted. I hadn't expected to find that he knew anything that might help me in my search for the murderer of Miller and Blake, but now it seemed that I might be wrong. After all, until now, Jones had had the run of the ship, and he just might have discovered something. He was talking to me through the barred window of the cell where the skipper had confined him after his attempt to start a mutiny in the engine room. And as I watched the shifty eyes and slack mouth, I was reminded of that other occasion when Jones had claimed to know something, when he'd alleged that it was Captain Goddard who'd told him to attack me with a knife. Jones' motive then had been revenge, and I wondered what it was on this occasion. Who did Jones want to settle a score with? Who did he hate badly enough to accuse him of murder?
Well, is it a deal, Kendall?
No.
Now, listen, you want to find that murderer, don't you? It ain't going to do you no good if we reach Jamaica and you ain't solved these crimes, is it, Mr. Copper's narc?
I'm not making any deals with you, Jones. If you know something, you better talk and talk fast. You've got enough trouble hanging over you without facing a charge of withholding information.
I'm not withholding information. I've offered to tell you and
At a price I'm not prepared to pay. And in any case, why have you kept it to yourself till now? Was there a price behind your silence, Jones?
What do you mean?
Assuming you do know the killer's name, what are we going to do about it? Blackmail him or her?
Man's got to live, Mr. Kendall.
Sometimes I can't help wondering why.
But that was before the skipper ordered me locked up. Now I'm prepared to sell the murderer's name in exchange for my freedom. I mean, to go mad locked in here. Another fortnight at least till we get to Jamaica. I couldn't face it, Kendall.
You haven't forgotten the episode with the knife, have you, Jones? When you said it was the skipper who put you up to that?
I was lying then, and you know.
All right. But I'm not making any deals with you until I've checked the information. If it's on the level, I'll talk to the skipper then, not before. So let's have it, Jones. The name.
All right, Kendall, but you drive a hard bargain.
Have you talked to anyone else about this?
No one. Why should I?
I'm just checking. All right, now let's have it.
Come closer to the bar. Don't want to shout it out. Dangerous knowledge for me to have, locked in down here. Wouldn't be hard for someone to sneak down and let me have it, would it?
You mean the killer knows that you know?
I didn't say that. But he might.
Oh, stop beating around the bush and talk.
Sure I'll talk. It's the bloomin' chief engineer who done it. I saw him. Saw him both times. Cregan's the murderer you're looking for. That smug Scot.
Kendall, are you down there with Jones?
Yes, skipper. Is something wrong?
Oh, no, Mr. Kendall. Everything's just dandy. Did Jones give you any information?
Well, yes. He just told me that the chief engineer is the killer we're looking for.
And yes, Skipper. I wouldn't lie to you. Not now.
Not now, eh? It might interest you to know that Mr. Cregan just came up to the bridge, Kendall, and we had a very interesting conversation. Are you going to deny that you've talked with Cregan just a half hour ago, Jones?
Sure, I talked with him. He come in to make sure that the padlock on the door was secure and...
There you are, convicted out of his own lying mouth. You know what this dirty rat said to Mr. Cregan, Dirk? He told the chief that I was the killer of Miller and Blake.
What? I give you my word.
Your word? You ought to have your tongue cut out. First it's me, and now it's Cregan. How many other people are you going to accuse? Get this door unlocked, Kendall. I'm going to tear you apart, Jones. I'll break every bone in your body.
Cut it out, skipper.
I gave you an order, Mr. Kendall. Either unlock that door or you'll spend the rest of this voyage in the brig with Jones.
While he makes a lot more accusations, involves any other person he cares to. Look, can't you see his game, skipper? He blames you, Cregan, and me for the fact that he's in custody. He'd try anything to get square with the three of us. After I'd arrested you and Cregan, it'd be my turn. Major Challoner, or perhaps the doctor, would be told that I was a fake, a fraud. They'd be informed by Jones that I was the murderer. Before you know it, this ship would be a hotbed of warring factions, accusing each other, fighting each other, while Jones sat back and laughed to himself. I'm right, aren't I, Jones?
You gotta believe me, Mr. Kendall. I'm telling you the truth. Cregan did it.
Yes, and I did it. Which one of us was it?
Oh, come on, Skipper. Let's get back on deck.
You're right, Kendall. There's a smell of rottenness down here.
Okay, Mr. High and Mighty Captain Goddard, but you'll be sorry. I'm going to get even with both of you. When we reach Jamaica, I'll talk. I'll have the both of you plastered across the front page of every newspaper that'll listen to me. Try jamming that in your filthy
Just
pipe,
one
you...
more word, Jones. Just one. I'm waiting for it. And so help me out.
Okay, Skipper. You win. But I can wait me time. I can wait. And maybe the time's going to come when you realise that I was right. And when it does, I hope I'm there to laugh at both of you.
Forget it, Chief. Kendall didn't believe a word that Jones said, and flying off the handle now isn't going to help matters. We both know the kind of lying dog that Jones is.
I want to see Kendall. If he doesn't believe Jones, then I want to hear it from his own lips. I'm not going to work on this ship for another fortnight under any kind of cloud, and that's flat.
Kendall's making his rounds, Chief. He said he'd join us in my cabin.
A lifetime at sea, and I've got to face this kind of thing. I only wish I'd retired before this voyage. If it hadn't been for you, I would have, John.
Look, Chief, come in.
Skipper? Mr. Cregan?
Well, I'm waiting, Mr. Kendall. Have you got the handcuffs with you?
Yeah, the leg irons, Chief. Don't forget those.
It's no laughing matter, my boy. And it's committing a crime.
Along with the skipper. He might share the cell with you.
You don't find me getting all hot under the collar about this, Chief. Although I must admit, after you told me what Jones said to you, I went down to the brig to tear him apart.
Aye. Well, that might happen yet.
Now, look, both of you, I've got enough trouble to face on this ship without anything happening to Jones. Is that clear? Just for the record, Chief, I don't believe a word of what Jones said, but if it's going to make you any happier, you can step along to my cabin and make a statement.
I'll do that. I'll do it this very moment. I'll not continue as chief engineer of the Tangmar until I know you both believe in my innocence.
For Pete's sake, Chief.
Come on, Mr. Cregan, let's get it over. I have a feeling that if Jones could see the way you're taking this, he'd be tickled to death.
Well, my dear Sharon, have you nothing further to say?
It's all been said.
Except for one word.
Which one?
Yes, will do. Meaning that in future you will refrain from even passing the time of day with Mr. Kendall or any other so-called eligible young man on the ship.
Can't you understand even now? I'm not afraid of you any longer. How many times do I have to tell you?
Then I would suggest that you fear a little for Kendall's safety. If you wish that young man to reach Jamaica alive, then
Ilona was right about you, Father. You're terrified that something might happen to you before you get your hands on that money. And to hide your fear, you're trying to shout it down, trying to terrify me. You wouldn't dare do anything to Dirk, because if you did, then you'd never get that money. You'd go to prison.
Where do you think you're going?
To find Dirk and apologize to him. Apologize for the fact that my...
You will do nothing of the sort. Come back this instant, you hear me?
It'd be hard not to, wouldn't it? But if you try to stop me, Father, I shall take the matter to the captain.
Sharon, please. Please come back.
Father, it's no good.
I'm begging you, Sharon. Don't go to Kendall.
Well, Father?
You're right, Sharon. I am frightened. I can't bear to face the thought of life without you.
Father?
I know I haven't always shown it, but you mean more to me than I can ever possibly tell you. I've watched you grow more like your dear mother every day. More the kind of woman she was when I married her than I ever thought possible. These fellows like Blake and Kendall, they're not good enough for you, Sharon. I want you to have everything. I want you to have...
Please stop this, Father.
No, you've got to let me say it. You've got to remain with me, Sharon. Always. Why, when I look at you, I feel a young man again. As if it wipes out the past and I'm back to the start of my army career. Young penniless officer, fired with ambition, determined to prove that a lack of money does not matter. That I'll make my way by proving my ability as a soldier. And while your dear mother was alive, I could do that.
But I've got to live my own life.
When I get my hands on my share of the Wetherman's estate, you can have anything you like. I'll give you the world. It'll be yours. £250,000, Sharon. Stay with me and help me to spend it. Anything you've ever dreamed of possessing. Anything that
You can't buy the thing I want most, Father. My own home, my own family. To watch my own children growing up in the kind of warmth that I never knew.
All right, Sharon. Go your own way, then. But when you find out the kind of fortune-hunting young lout you've sacrificed yourself for, don't come crawling to me for comfort. Don't expect me to take pity on you.
Good night, Father.
Good night, Catherine.
Father. Good night.
Catherine? Catherine, she mustn't ever leave me. Never leave me. If she does, Catherine, I'll have to believe that you really are dead. And you're not. You won't ever be. Not while I can look at her.
As the chief engineer wrote out his statement, I couldn't know that with Cregan's help, I was to finally trap the killer who stalked the decks of this passage of the Tangmar.
Barometer's falling fast, Kendall. Order double lashings on the hatch covers and the boats. I want everything movable on deck double-checked. We're in for a blow, a bad one.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
I'm almost looking forward to the bad weather, Kendall. Give us all something to occupy our minds. Won't have time to think of Miller or Blake. And maybe it'll give Mr. Cregan something to think about. 2 days, Kendall, and Cregan hasn't poked his head outside the engine room. Haven't I got enough to worry about without my chief engineer sulking like a blasted schoolboy?
I left the bridge and made my way along the steeply canting deck of the Tangmar, checking the lashings that were secure. Already the bosun was at work, driving the oilskin crew, his voice raucous above the rising wind. Astern, huge green, cream-tipped rollers piled up, tons of water that threatened to crash down on us and then miraculously raced by, almost level with the deck rail. 2 days had gone by since Jones had asked to see me and threatened to divulge the name of the killer. 2 days during which Mr. Cregan, the Scots engineer, had remained below, driving his engine room staff and himself, rapping out orders, demanding efficiency from his men, while they swore under their breaths and wished Cregan and Jones elsewhere. One thing was sure, if Jones was released from the brig, he'd wish he was back behind bars when Cregan's engine room staff got through with him. But below decks in the passengers' lounge, Ilona Fedorov and Dr. Martin Lawler gave no thought to the rising storm.
A penny for them, Martin.
Oh, yes.
Well, what were you thinking of?
I'm afraid to think too much in case someone pinches me and I wake up.
Oh, don't you believe it's true even now? I mean us?
I want to. I should. After all, you've put up with me for quite a few days now.
Dr. Lawler, that's quite enough. Put up with you, indeed. Do you think I was putting up with you, as you call it, when you asked me to marry you?
You did say yes, didn't you?
Shall I repeat it?
No.
You must remember it could easily turn out to be a dream for me, too.
Could it?
Since you proposed to me, I've thought of nothing else except your future and how I would fit into it.
You'll make a wonderful doctor's wife.
You see, I need reassurance, too. Supposing your friends don't care for me. Supposing they don't like the idea of Dr. Woolola having a continental wife. It might even affect your practice.
Only for the better. One look at you and my waiting room will never be empty. Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, that's not a bad idea. I might even sack my receptionist and use you.
Is she pretty?
Miss Hawkins? Oh, no. Inefficient, a positive terror. I'm scared of her.
Oh, I bet you she eats out of your hand.
Bites it, you mean? Oh, but she's a good receptionist. Yes, it's going to be dirty weather, I should think. Are you afraid of storms?
If I say yes, will you take me in your arms and comfort me?
You mean you are afraid?
A little, I think.
Ilona, darling.
But not anymore. Oh, Martin, if I were to die at this very moment, I could be happy.
Oh, now, don't talk like
but
that.
I must confess it, I like storms. Oh, no, please don't move away. I like them even more when you're holding me close.
I don't know how you put up with me.
How do you mean?
Well, here's every man on this ship would give his right arm to hold you in his arms, and you have to think up excuses to persuade your fiancé.
But I like that. I think at heart it must be very wicked. A dancing girl who wants only to please her lord and master. Oh, Martin, nothing must happen to you. You must be careful, very careful.
Yeah, what's wrong?
Oh, the death of Miller and Blake, I can't forget them, no matter how hard I try. And if anything happened to you...
Oh, beg your pardon. Really, I'll go right away and come back later.
No, wait, Tuka. It's all right. Come in.
Are you sure?
Don't look so frightened, Mr. Tuka. Close the door.
I wanted to see you, Doctor, to ask your help. I didn't mean to intrude, I assure you.
Mr. Tuka, you're not intruding in the least. And you can be the first to know. Dr. Martin and I are to be married.
Oh, really? Well, then allow me to congratulate you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Now, what can I do for you?
Well, you see, I don't really know how to put this, but I heard that tonight we're going to have poultry, the chicken, for dinner.
Oh?
Please don't laugh at me, will you? You see, I was always considered to be something of an artist in the preparation of a bird. I had quite a reputation at one time during my first wife's lifetime. Special kind of stuffing that I invented, you know. Little wines and herbs.
Oh, now, look here, Tuka. What the devil does this have to do with needing my help?
Well, I thought perhaps you might ask Captain Goddard if I could be allowed into the galley to supervise the cooking of the poultry for dinner tonight. There, you see, it's 2 o'clock now, and I should like to know one way or the other quite soon. If the bird is not cooked, just so, you know, slowly and with, with affection. Oh, it's a criminal waste.
Yes, but why not go to the captain yourself, Tuka? I mean, after all, Oh, I see.
Exactly, Dr. Lawler. I thought you'd arrive at the correct conclusion. A convicted poisoner. Even my dearest Martha, who loved me deeply, would not allow me to prepare any food. And I love to create dishes. I do so love it. The memory of my first wife's death, Doctor, rises between Martha and myself to prevent that mutual trust upon which, of course, marriage should be founded.
Now, Tuka, I'm awfully sorry.
I served my prison sentence, Dr. Lawler. I paid my debt to society. At no stage of my trial did the judge in sentencing me say that I was to be barred from the kitchens of the world. It's most unfair, Doctor, shockingly so. All I want to do is to tickle the palate and...
You haven't got a chance, Tuka, and you know it.
You really think that?
Well, you haven't exactly kept your past a secret, have you? What do you think would happen if you did go to help out in the galley?
I know. One attack of indigestion and I would be arrested on suspicion of poisoning someone.
Yes, forget it, Tuka.
The doctor is right, Mr. Tuka.
Oh, yes, and apart from anything else, the captain is going to be much too busy to care what's for dinner or who cooks it.
Well, thank you. I felt it was a hopeless cause. Thank you again for listening to me anyway. Oh, yes, and I do wish you both all the luck in the world.
That's Poor little man.
He was so blessed serious about it. I dare say he'd have even let his first wife live if he'd thought that he'd be barred from the kitchens from the rest of his life. He'd probably sit at dinner tonight with his nose in the air and... Oh, wait a minute. Ilona, why do you suppose Tuka wanted to help to prepare the poultry?
Shift your course by half a degree, Harris. I'll have the skin off your back.
Okay, Skipper.
We'll run with the storm.
So this is where you play God, is it, Captain Goddard?
What the devil do you think you're doing on my bridge?
I used to command myself. A soldier, Captain Goddard. Gave my life to the army. I've got a right to be here.
You're drunk, Challoner. Get below.
And drunk? And why shouldn't I be? You ever tried sitting in a cabin, Goddard? Surrounded by ghosts of the past? That's what I've been doing for 2 days now. Longer than that. Never since we sailed. I want my gun back, Goddard. I have no intention of leaving this bridge without it.
You'll get it back when we get to Jamaica and not before. You threatened to use that gun on Mr. Kendall. If I'd had my way, I'd have had you locked in your cabin for the remainder of the voyage. Now take yourself below.
Just who do you think you're talking to? Captain of a battered old tramp that should be scrapped. I'm a major, Captain Goddard. You'll pay my rank and give it the respect it deserves.
I'm giving you till the count of 3. If you're not on your way by then, I'll throw you off the bridge.
I wouldn't advise that, Goddard.
1.
Man against the elements, eh? Pitting his puny strength against the forces of nature.
2.
Different kind of fighting in India, Captain Goddard. Behind every rock lurks an enemy.
3. All right, Challoner, you ask for it.
Leave me alone.
What's wrong? This drunken fool demands his gun back, Kendall. If I thought he'd blow his brains out, I'd let him have it like a shot. Now, on you wait, Major.
Well, aren't you going to help him, Kendall?
Keep back, Kendall. I can handle this. You take the bridge. I'll escort Major Challoner below myself. Now, start walking, Challoner. Walk, curse you. Not to carry below.
I'll have your right for this, Goddard. I report you. Have you run down? Do it yourself. Have you run down?
What happened?
Major Challoner was drunk. Came charging up to the bridge, yelling about his army career. Said he wanted his gun back.
Dirk! Oh, Dirk, are you all right?
Sharon.
He threatened to kill you, Dirk. He's mad. I was so afraid you might be...
Sharon, Captain Goddard's taken your father below.
First he pleads with me to stay with him. Then he threatens that if I don't, he'll kill anyone who looks at me. I can't stand it, Dirk.
Well, look, I can't leave the bridge now, Sharon. Not until Captain Goddard comes back. You go to your cabin and I'll come down as soon as I'm free.
Oh, I'm sorry to make such a fool of myself, but if he doesn't leave me alone, stop torturing me, threatening me, I'll kill myself, Dirk.
Sharon.
I only wish I had the courage to kill him. My own father, Dirk. I hate him. I hate him.
Sharon Challoner had taken all she could stand. She was white-faced and trembling as she left the bridge. Unless Major Challoner was stopped, I knew that before long the will of Victor Wherryman wouldn't be the only reason for murder in this passage of the Tangmar.
I don't give a hoot. How far off the course we are, Quartermaster? What do you want me to do, risk bringing her around in a sea like this? We'll run before the storm till she blows herself out.
The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
And another thing. If Major Basil Challoner shows his face on my bridge again, you have my permission to chuck him off. For his own sake, I hope he gives me sea room for the rest of this voyage.
I could hear the skipper's voice above the storm as I left the bridge and went below to talk with Sharon Challoner. If the Major intended to continue making all our lives miserable, then he had to be stopped now, before we came face to face with a tragedy that would have nothing to do with the Wherryman estate. We were 17 days out from Sydney, bound for Jamaica via Panama, and the storm was getting progressively worse. I stumbled along the tilting companionway to the passengers' cabins, my mind concerned only with the plight of Sharon Challoner, who had grown up in the shadow of her father's hatred and possessiveness. As I knocked on the door of her cabin, I'd even forgotten that there was a killer aboard the Tangmar. A killer who'd already tried to kill me once.
Is that you, Dirk?
Yes?
Come in.
Sorry I couldn't get down earlier, but I've only just come off watch. Everything all right?
If you mean by that, has Father been bothering me again? He hasn't. I imagine he's gone back to his cabin to drink away the ignominy he'd feel at being hustled off the bridge. Oh, Dirk, I'm frightened. If he gets hold of a gun,
Sharon,
then...
he won't try to kill me or anyone else.
How can you be sure?
I can't, but I've got a feeling that he wants his gun back for a different reason.
What? Well, he threatened to kill you. You know he did.
To scare you into doing as he wants, to force you to remain with him.
But we had all that out 2 nights ago. And although we had a dreadful scene, I thought he'd understood at last. He was quite pleasant for him when I left him. Since then, he stayed in his cabin. When I knocked, he told me to go away. Until today, when he burst in here and said he was going up to the bridge to kill you.
Knowing very well that you'd rush up after him and see that nothing happened anyway.
But he's been just locked in his cabin drinking, Dirk.
While he worked out this last desperate method of making sure that you didn't get away from him. Well, I'm going in to see Challoner now.
I thought I'd find you in here, Kendall. I told you to stay away from my daughter.
Father.
My very first day aboard this tub, I told you to come to me if there's anything you wanted to know. That was an order, Kendall. An order that you chose to disobey.
I was on my way to your cabin, Challoner.
Major Challoner. Major.
Father, you're drunk.
Of course I'm drunk. Why shouldn't I be? My own daughter parading in front of the officers of this tramp steamer like a...
Shut up!
Were you speaking to me, sir?
I was, and I repeat it. Shut up. There's been enough tragedy on this ship. I'm not going to stand by and watch you cause another.
You have no right to interfere between my daughter and I.
I asked him to. I need someone's help.
Oh, I'm glad your mother isn't alive to hear you talk like that, Sharon. You mean you turn to a man like Kendall? A man who has no right to the uniform he wears? An amateur? Like all the other men who walk over the graves of those who deserve promotion. Men who have given their lives to their country. And for what? To be discarded. Thrown to one side. Oh, I've seen you 100 times, Kendall, in 100 different places, fattening your own chances of promotion on the experience you gained from trained officers.
You're not making sense, Major Challoner.
You couldn't be expected to understand. Anything to drink in here, Sharon?
No.
Don't lie to me, girl.
Challoner, listen to me.
Are you still here? Don't you know when you're not wanted?
I've told you, Father. I want Dirk here.
Dirk? Dirk? Did you give her permission to use your Christian name, Kendall?
You've had your say, Major Challoner, and now whether you like it or not, you'll listen to me. Sit down. I said sit down!
My daughter doesn't think I would kill you, Kendall. She thinks I want that money from Victor Wherryman's estate too badly. Well, she's wrong.
On the contrary, you wanted your gun back to play your last ace in your attempt to keep Sharon with you.
I'm afraid I don't understand.
Then I'll set it out for you. The threat to murder me was only a bluff. You wanted your gun back for a different reason. A sword of Damocles to suspend over Sharon's head. Suicide, Major Challoner. You intended to make her believe that if she carried out her intention of living her own life, you'd commit suicide. Isn't that right?
Go on.
You never would have done it, of course. Because if you had, she'd be free. You've tried everything else. Threats and pleading, all to no avail. This was to be the final card, and you sat in your cabin working it out while you drank enough courage to go up and see Captain Goddard.
I've never needed to drink myself into a condition where I could handle riff-raff.
With Sharon chained by the knowledge that if she left you, you'd commit suicide. You had the game neatly played.
Is this true, Father?
Of course not.
You're lying, Major. And you're afraid to face the reason why you won't let Sharon go her own way.
So you think you know that, too?
Yes. While Sharon plays the dutiful daughter, there's no chance of her dying as her mother did, is there?
Don't ever speak of Catherine. Do you hear me? You have no right, either of you. All right, Kendall. But I'll still have the last laugh. There's a killer on this ship. Not someone like me who just makes threats, but a killer who's already struck twice. And I hope next time it gets to you, Kendall. Gets to you before you find out his identity. And I pray that this time there won't be any Lee Blake to take the bullets for you.
Don't you think I've enough to do in the engine room, Skipper, without having to fight my way up to the bridge in weather like this?
I'll take the wheel, quartermaster. Get on over to the other side of the bridge, will you, and keep a lookout.
Aye, Skipper.
No need for the crew to know what a stubborn old fool you are, Cregan.
I don't care who knows. I'll not be accused of committing a crime I've done my best to prevent. And while I'm about it, I'd rather you didn't ask me to stand guard over the passengers in the future. If anything else happened, I'd be the first man that Kendall would suspect.
For Pete's sake, man, I asked you to come to the bridge because I wanted to talk to you about the ship. How are the engines taking this pounding?
They'll be all right, providing you don't keep asking me to leave them on fool errands like this.
Chief, we all know the kind of man that Jones is.
And he accused me of being a murderer.
Well, me too. Have you forgotten that?
How you feel about it is your own affair. I can only answer for myself.
Yeah. And so you lock yourself in the engine room and won't have a sociable word with anyone, including me.
Well, while I'm down there, I can't be accused of anything. I've got an alibi the whole time.
Oh, obstinate Scots. Oh, all right, forget it. I suppose I can't blame you.
Have you finished now?
Listen, Chief, if you won't stand your turn as guard, then it's only making Kendall's job harder.
Look, he'll never find the killer, and we both know it. The job's too big for the lad. Look, he should be defending the reputation of innocent men as well. That's what the police are for.
In the name of... What was he supposed to do, gag Jones?
That's not a bad idea, at that.
Get on back to your engines, Chief.
Thank you. And you've warned me again, Skipper. Try using the voice pipe. That's what it's for.
Why, you old... All right, quartermaster, come back here and take the wheel. And stop flapping those big ears of yours. You use your eyes for lookout, or didn't you know that?
Come in. Oh, Doctor. Something wrong?
No, not yet.
Have you been up on deck? You're wet through, man.
Yes, it seemed like the best place to do some thinking.
That's what I've been trying to do. Better hang that slicker behind the door. Look!
Here, let me give you a hand.
Oh, I'm getting tired of picking things up.
Yes, do you think you'll weather it all right?
Well, as long as there aren't too many like that. I've seen bigger seas. You go overboard in this, we never find you. What's on your mind?
Well, it's Alona. I don't suppose you know that we're engaged to be married.
What? Well, congratulations.
Yes, thank you, but that's just the point. This murderer. You've got to find him. I couldn't bear it if anything happened to Alona now.
Oh, I know how you feel, Martin, but... Well, look, you're going to learn something about these murders that I'm probably a fool to tell you, so... So far, only Goddard and myself know about this. It's the Slavin killing. He died at the hands of a man who's just been arrested. I received word from London from Colonel Hacking.
What?
That's why I'm more in the dark than I was before. While I thought Miller and Blake and Slavin were killed by the one person, I had a theory to work on.
Yes, and you had a motive. One of us, one of the beneficiaries who didn't want Slavin or Miller to collect their share of the Wherryman money.
And the same person killing Blake in mistake for me in order to stop the investigation and have a free hand in wiping out the others. The motive was greed.
Yes, but don't you see, Dirk, this alters the whole thing. There's got to be another motive. There's a second killer. Why not a second motive? Revenge, hatred. It's my belief that this murderer, whoever it is, wanted you to think that greed was the motive, to throw you off the scent while he or she killed, to satisfy some insane desire for revenge.
Staring up at Dr. Martin Lawler, and wondered if he, too, was trying to throw me off the killer's trail in this passage of the Tangmar.
There's got to be another motive, Kendall. Miller and Slavin were linked through the Wherryman estate, but that doesn't prove anything, not anymore. Find the man or woman on this ship who's motivated by hatred or revenge, and you've got your killer.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Unless you find that killer now, at once, then someone else is going to die. I don't want it to be a loner.
Dr. Lawler had come to my cabin after having been alone on deck. He was sure that I'd been thrown off the scent by the unknown killer in my belief that greed was the motive behind Miller's death. Now that he knew the facts in regard to Slavin's death, he was even more certain that if there was a second killer, then there must be a second motive. It was almost 8 bells on the evening of the storm-tossed 17th day out from Sydney. And while the storm raged above decks, suspicion and mystery were causing their own storm below. I wasn't aware at this stage that Mr. Cregan, still fuming over the accusation made against him by Jones, had refused to stand watch over the passengers' cabins, and that for the first time in days, the lives of the people that I had to protect were in danger. Dr. Lawler lit a cigarette and spoke again.
Look at it this way, Kendall. You've suspected Major Challoner and Ilona, Tuka, and me. We're the obvious suspects, the ones who stand to gain by Miller's and Slavin's deaths. Now you say Slavin's killer has been arrested. That alters the entire thing.
Up to a point, I know, but none of the passengers had ever met before. There's nothing in any of your past to suggest that any one of you could have any other motive but greed.
On the surface, that's the situation. While we're about it, you very quickly dropped Sharon Challoner out of your calculations, didn't you?
Dr. Lawler.
I know it's not gentlemanly to suggest such a thing, but I'm beyond all that. Ilona's life is in jeopardy as long as this killer remains unknown. And if your theory should prove to be right, that greed is the motive, then Sharon has as much reason as the rest of us for killing.
Well, I don't see how.
If her father was the only beneficiary to come through, then she'd stand to inherit the entire Wherryman fortune.
There's only one thing wrong with your thinking. Sharon Challoner doesn't want a bar of her father's share. She's anxious only to be free of him.
Well, that, too, could be a superb front.
It could, but I doubt it.
Yes, I do too, really. But Ilona Fedorov means everything to me. I don't want anything to happen to her because I overlooked the possible killer.
Aren't you presupposing that she'll be the next one to meet the killer? Why not you, or the Major, or Tuka, Shar, and perhaps me?
You can't deny that it might be Ilona, and that's all that concerns me.
Oh, well, I'm due on the bridge in a few minutes.
All right. right, I'll be on my way then. But remember what I said, Dirk. I still think there's a motive behind this that you haven't considered yet.
And about time, Kendall. Am I supposed to take the 8 till midnight watch as well?
I'm sorry, Skipper. I was held up by Dr. Lawler.
What's wrong with him?
Oh, nothing. Except that he seems to think Ilona Fedorov might be the next victim.
Does he now? Why?
Well, he's in love with her for a start.
He's one of our prime suspects. He's bound to try and fog the issue. Anything to take suspicion away from himself.
But, Skipper, Slavin's death does alter things in a way. The fact that he wasn't killed by the same person we're looking for.
I don't see how. It's my belief his murder was the trigger that fired this whole thing. Gave your murderer the idea.
Well, I've wired hacking for details of Slavin's background. Perhaps we can tie him in with someone aboard this ship. A friend, a relative, perhaps.
Well, there's no one on my ship by the name of Slavin.
I know that.
Anyway, Slavin was killed before we left England. The day before.
Yes, but you put into Plymouth for engine trouble, didn't you? Mr. Cregan was worried about that shaft there.
We were there for a couple of days while some fellow came all the way down from London to check. Couldn't find anything wrong, though.
Exactly, but by then, Slavin's death was all over the front pages of the papers and the story of the Wherryman estate.
So what?
Well, any one of your crew could have read about it. Even you.
The owners told me.
Supposing the killer isn't one of the passengers. And supposing he knows that each of the beneficiaries was in England at the time of Slavin's death. Automatically, if he cared for Slavin, he'd think that the people who stood to gain by Slavin's death had contrived it.
Do you mean to tell me that this cock and bull story of Lawler's has set you off on this track?
Now, just a minute. You, Lawler, and I are the only ones who know that Slavin's killer has been apprehended. Well, I'm going to see that everyone aboard finds that out. I don't know why, but I've a feeling it might save someone's life.
Well, good night, Kendall. And keep your thoughts on the Tangmar tonight. I don't want her to founder because catching a murderer was more important than keeping my ship on course.
Why, Major Challoner. Come in.
You sure you don't mind?
Not in the least. I'm glad to have somebody to talk to.
You don't object to the fact that I didn't knock? Join me in a drink, Tuka.
I'd rather not, you see.
You don't want to drink with me, is that it? Can't even persuade a convicted poisoner to drink.
Please, Major.
I'll drink by myself and to myself. We're the true people on this ship whom everyone loathes, Tuka.
Really, I don't see it's necessary
Now be quiet and listen to me. Did you know there wasn't anyone on guard outside our cabin tonight, Tuka? Did you? Didn't that make you scared? The killer might come in here at any moment and terminate your miserable little life. Wasn't that frightening at all?
I'd rather you went back to your old cabin, if you don't mind.
It's no good, Tuka. You can't pick and choose your own company. You've got to accept any of us who throw a bone of companionship in your path. How does it feel to be an outcast, Tuka? A pariah. The money won't make any difference, you know. You'll still be pointed out as a convict. It'd be better for all concerned if you died, Tuka.
If you don't go, Major Challoner, I shall call the captain.
What would you say to him? I told you a few home truths. Come on! Join me, Tuka. I'm in the mood to be generous. Even to your kind tonight.
I insist that you leave my cabin.
Perhaps I'm the killer that Kendall's looking for, huh? If I was, this could be your last drink. Goodness! You better have one, Tuka. Give you the courage to face it.
You are trying to frighten me. I don't believe you. Just because we all know you for what you are, you...
And what am I?
If I had a daughter, I should be proud of her.
Really? Or would she be proud of you, Tuka? I think not. I think not.
At least I wouldn't treat her badly. I wouldn't take out my anger on people who couldn't fight back.
Can't you fight back, Tuka?
I don't want to fight. I just want you to go. Please.
Ooh, I'm going. Sleep well, Tuka. But not too well. I just might come back and see that you don't get to Jamaica. Look at you. You petrified. Tuka, you ever suffer from nightmares, huh?
No. No.
Well, I think you might tonight, my friend. I think you just might. That is, if you get any sleep at all.
Martin, my dear, what's wrong? You seem so preoccupied.
I was just thinking of my conversation with Kendall. I know I'm right. He's on the wrong track over this whole thing.
Oh, no more. Not tonight, please. You will begin to frighten me soon.
Yes, but you haven't heard about slaving yet.
And I don't want to. Now, please, come on, smile. Let's talk about us, our plans.
There'll be time enough for that when we get off this confounded ship.
Martin.
I'm sorry. I feel so edgy tonight.
Then don't, please. Cigarette?
Yes, thank you.
Let me light it for you.
Thank you.
I don't think any of us will get much sleep tonight if the storm keeps up.
I'd be too busy trying to stay in our bunks, I suppose. Yes, who is it?
Me, Doctor. I'm sure you don't mind if I come in and join you. Or do you wish to be alone?
Major Challoner.
I'll handle this, Alona. I think you better go back to your cabin, Major Challoner.
Funny thing. That's what Tuka said, too. Imagine that. Convicted poisoner. Killer. Not wanting to drink with one of Her Majesty's officers.
Get out, Challoner.
Just a little drink. Won't hurt you. I'd like to drink to your problematical future.
Come on. Out.
They should have marked me. Not wanted on the voyage, Dr. Lawler. Take your hands off me!
I'm sorry about that, Alona, but...
I'll go after him, Martin. Make sure that he's all right.
Yes, perhaps you're right. Major, That's odd. There's no one on guard outside tonight. Perhaps I'd better go and find Mr. Cregan. I won't be a moment.
Is the Major there?
Yes, he's here, sitting in the companionway. Up to it. Come on, Major Challoner.
Poor Sharon. I wonder what will become of her. Hurry back, Martin, please. Ilona Fedorov, don't be silly. What can happen to you when Martin is here? What can... Martin? Is that... Who is it? Turn on the light, please. No. No, don't. Stay away from me, no.
It was just after 10 o'clock. I had 2 hours to go on watch. And on the bridge, staring out into the storm-racked night, I couldn't know that the killer had struck once again in this passage of the Tangmar.
I'll take the rest of your watch, Kendall. Get below, fast. We've got another killing on our hands. And this time it's Ilona Fedorov.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
I was only out of her cabin for a few minutes, Kendall. The killer must have been hiding somewhere along the companionway. I'd gone to help Major Challoner back to his cabin and to find out why no one was on guard outside tonight. When I came back, she... I found her like this.
On watch, I'd had the feeling that the storm was blowing itself out. That by midnight, the Tangmar would be in calm water again. And that was true of the storm above decks. But down in Ilona Fedorov's cabin, a different kind of storm had blown up with savage ferocity. This time, the instrument of destruction was one of Dr. Lawler's scalpels, and I found myself wondering how the murderer had obtained it. The only fingerprints on it were Dr. Lawler's. It was just possible that I was face to face with the murderer I sought at last. The doctor, who'd warned me only that afternoon that Ilona Fedorov was in danger.
You didn't take any notice of me, did you, Kendall? I warned you that this might happen.
I know that, Lawler. That's the thing that puzzles me. How could you have been so sure that Miss Fedorov would be the next victim?
You think I killed her?
These are your fingerprints.
Oh, for heaven's sake, man. When I came back and found her, I acted automatically. I removed the weapon and tried to help her. Even as I did so, I knew I was too late.
I see. And you say there was no one on guard outside this cabin tonight? I thought Mr. Cregan was to take care of that.
So did I. When I went up to inform Captain Goddard of what had happened, I mentioned it to him. About the guard, I mean. He said that Cregan had spoken to him that afternoon. Asked to be relieved of guard duty.
You say why?
I don't care what his reasons were, Kendall. All I know is that Ilona... She's dead, Kendall. Murdered because none of you thought her life was important enough to save.
Oh, Martin, try and...
Calm down. Is that what you're going to say? On the very day that I begged you for more protection, pleaded with you to see that nothing happened to her, that's the time you decide not to have a guard on duty. If I had my way, Mr. Cregan would be arrested for neglecting his duty, and the same goes for Captain Goddard and for you, Kendall.
I know how you feel, Lawler, believe me.
Find the man or woman who murdered Ilona and give me just 5 minutes alone with that person.
Well, you know that's impossible. Now listen to me. I want to know everything that happened from the time you left this cabin. How long you were out of it, who you were with, the whole story. Don't leave out the smallest thing.
All right. We were sitting in here talking. Then Major Challoner came in, drunk. He was as objectionable as usual, and I suggested he should return to his own cabin. As he left, Ilona seemed to think that he needed assistance, so I went with him. When I opened the door, he was slumped down against the companionway. Then I noticed that there was no one on guard. I tried to help Challoner to his feet, but he was pretty much of a dead weight. I finally got him to the door of his cabin where I left him, and I went off to look out for Mr. Cregan.
So you didn't actually see Challoner go inside his cabin?
He had the door half open.
Was the cabin empty?
I didn't notice. Why?
I just want to get it straight, that's all. Then you went after Cregan?
Yes.
Did you find him?
No. I knocked on his cabin door and there was no answer. I was going to try to open the door when one of the seamen came along the companionway and told me that Cregan was down in the engine room and that I'd better not disturb him, not unless I wanted to be ordered back to my quarters.
Cregan's been in a filthy temper ever since that business with Jones. Go on.
Oh, none of this helps, Kendall. All that matters is that when I got back here, I found that this light was out and Ilona was... What I was doing while I was away from her cabin is not important.
This seaman you saw, do you know his name?
No. I've seen him a few times on deck. I'd know him again.
Good. So I can check your story with Challoner and this seaman. Have you any idea how long it was between the time you left Challoner at his door and the time you saw this seaman?
About 5 or 6 minutes, I suppose.
Thanks, Doctor.
If you're trying to say that after I left Challoner, I came back here and killed Ilona and went off to find Cregan, you're wrong. I didn't kill her. I couldn't. I loved her, Kendall.
Major Challoner, according to Dr. Lawler, you went to Ilona Fedorov's cabin last night and you were drunk. Is that right?
I haven't the faintest recollection.
Now, look here,
The
Challoner.
events of last night are a blur to me.
But you must remember something.
I was anesthetized, Kendall. Purposely, I might add. This morning, I'm paying the penalty.
So if you've quite finished...
Ilona Fedorov was murdered last night. Does that mean anything to you?
I gathered something unpleasant must have happened. Even in my shattered condition, I've noticed the undertone of tension in the air this morning.
And unless you can account for your movements at the time she was killed, then I wouldn't find it difficult to say your drunkenness last night was an act. An act which allowed you to get away with murder.
You mean literally?
It's been done before.
If you doubt that I was drunk, take a look at that bottle of whiskey. I think if you took care, you might squeeze just one nip out of it.
All right, so you were drunk.
My head's proof of that. Now, why don't you go away, Kendall? I want to go back to sleep. You know, you could have proved my condition by waking me up last night.
I tried to. I have come in and dragged you out of your bunk, except that your door was locked from the inside.
Well, does that sound as if I was in a normal slumber?
It could mean that you were in here wide awake and determined not to answer the door.
Dirk Kendall, my boy. I know exactly how much you'd like to pin this on me, but it won't wash, just as the other crimes couldn't be laid at my door.
That hasn't been proved yet.
I have Sharon's alibi for the time that, what was his name? Where's Blake? At the time he was killed.
And without that alibi, you'd be under arrest now.
Well, then I must be grateful to Sharon, in spite of her apparent loathing.
Listen, Challoner. Were you with any of the other passengers last night?
I really can't say. If I was, then I must have been very drunk, wasn't I, since I can't stand the sight of them.
Then you can't or won't help me at all, not even to back up Dr. Lawler's story.
Exactly. Well, you better run along, Kendall. Your investigation beckons. Oh, by the way, since you seem to doubt my story, to doubt that I was drunk last night, too drunk, I might add, to hurt a fly, there is something I can tell you.
What?
One night in the desert, I was in charge of a section of the line near Merza Matru. I was drunk then, Kendall, and that's why I was invalided out of the army. Now get out of my sight, you're making my hangover worse.
If I was a superstitious man, Quartermaster, I'd swear that storm last night was the work of a devil.
Why, sir?
Because the moment Ilona Fedorov was killed, it started to die out. As if the elements knew what was going to happen. And the moment it did, they were satisfied. Well, don't look at me like that, man. I'm not out of my mind. What's our rate of knots?
10, sir.
And apart from losing one of the boats, no damage. Just another murder. Nothing to worry about at all.
You sent for me, Skipper?
I did, Mr. Cregan. I suppose you know what happened aboard my ship last night?
Aye.
Doesn't concern you that if you'd not backed down on your guard duty, Miss Fedorov might still be alive?
I warned you of the way I felt. You had plenty of time to appoint someone else.
Yeah, I know I did. And with the storm, I forgot, Chief. I went off watch last night, and I must have been asleep in a matter of seconds. Next thing I remember was Dr. Lawler knocking on the door, yelling that she was dead.
And the person who killed this Peter Slavin has now got 3 murders to answer for.
No, he hasn't. Or she hasn't.
What does that mean?
Dirk Kendall was going to see that everyone heard the truth about Slavin's death this morning. So it won't hurt if I tell you, Mr. Cregan. Colonel Hacking of Interpol sent Kendall a message informing him that Slavin was killed in a waterfront brawl and that his killer had been apprehended. So the murderer we're looking for is someone else again.
Did you see this message?
Aye, I did. Sparks brought it up to the bridge himself.
And why has Kendall kept quiet about it till now? If it isn't some kind of trick, that is.
Why in heaven's name would it be a trick?
Well, he seems to dream up all kinds of schemes to find this murderer. Like the time he was waiting in his cabin, claiming he knew the killer's identity and he intended to arrest him. That was the night Blake was killed.
It's no trick this time, it's the truth. I saw that message with my own eyes.
Look, I know how you feel all about this, Skipper. We've sailed together a long time now, and, well, I'd have liked our last voyage to be one we'd look back on with pleasure.
Pleasure? Commanding a floating morgue.
Yeah, maybe if I had been on guard duty last night, Miss Fedorov would be alive now. But there have been other times when she would have been unprotected, Skipper. You know that. We can't follow them around 24 hours a day.
It's an odd thing, Chief, but After the first shock, it's almost as if we're following some kind of predestined pattern. I'm beginning to wonder if any of us will be alive when we reach Jamaica.
I'd give my right arm to bring her back.
And I wish you'd have thought the same last night. When you allowed that damn fool accusation of a man like Jones to stand between you and your duty.
Now listen to me, Skipper. While we were in that storm, the engines needed my full attention. If I hadn't been down there tending them, watching that shaft bearing with my heart in my mouth the whole time in case it seized up, then maybe none of us would have been here this morning.
If you can't trust your officers...
Trust them! Of course I trust them. While I can watch them, while I can see that they're carrying out my orders. I stepped out of the engine room for 5 minutes last night, and when I got back, that shaft bearing was red hot because I'm full of a grease that had forgotten to use an oil can. So remember that, Captain Goddard. My job is to tend the engines of this ship, not to find murderers.
As I went to talk with Tuka to find out if he'd seen the doctor or Major Challoner the night before, I was in for another shock in this passage of the Tangmar.
I'm only too anxious to help in any way I can, Mr. Kendall. You can be quite sure of that. That poor girl, poor Ilona Fedorov. It wasn't even as though her manners were bad at all. Not like my first wife, Mr. Kendall. Not like that at all. She deserved to die.
The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
It's odd, isn't it? I don't feel frightened anymore, Mr. Kendall. I have a feeling that I'm going to reach Jamaica safely. That with the passing of the storm, the danger is past for all of us. Now, what is it you want me to tell you?
I hadn't expected Edwin Tuka to be one bit composed. I'd thought that with the death of Ilona Fedorov, he'd be bathed in the perspiration of terror. But not Tuka. On this, our 18th day at sea, he was completely at ease. And I couldn't help wondering what had brought this about. Normally, he'd answer questions with his eyes performing acrobatics in order not to look at his interrogator, while his hands washed themselves with invisible soap. And this was the same man who'd skulked in his cabin, afraid to venture on deck, afraid almost to eat in case his food was poisoned. In the short time we'd been at sea, Tuka had found some hidden strength, while Major Challoner seemed to be falling to pieces. I let Tuka sit there for a moment, waiting for the usual nervous babble. But he looked me straight in the eye. And finally, it was I who spoke. I don't have to outline to you, Tuka, what happened last night. You've obviously heard all about it.
I have, yes. But I assure you I'm completely innocent. I wouldn't have harmed a hair of that dear girl's head. Why, of late she's been most pleasant to me.
Yes, well, getting back to last night, did you see Major Challoner at all?
Yes, I did. He came to my cabin.
Why?
He wanted me to have a drink with him.
And did you?
No, he was most insulting. I asked him to leave.
He claims he doesn't remember anything about last night, that he was drunk.
He was under the influence, yes. Not drunk enough, though, to be any pleasanter than usual.
I see. So he left your cabin at about what time?
Well, he really couldn't say for certain. I imagine it was getting on for 10 o'clock.
And you went straight to bed?
Yes, I did. I wasn't feeling awfully well. With the ship tossing, you know.
Did you hear anything unusual outside, I mean?
Well, come to think of it, yes, I did. I remember a noise outside in the companionway.
What kind of noise?
It was as though somebody had slipped or fallen against the wall.
Well, didn't it concern you?
Oh, Mr. Kendall, please. Not enough to make me want to investigate.
Anything else?
Yes, odd footsteps. I think I must have dozed off. But I do seem to remember someone. Yes, Though I can't be quite sure, I do have a feeling I heard someone walking very slowly.
Stealthily?
No, not quite. Rather more carefully, you know. Of course, the ship was rolling a good deal at the time, so anybody would have to be very careful, wouldn't they?
These footsteps...
I think I've heard them before, but where or when, I can't quite say. I'm probably imagining the whole thing, of course, simply because I know what happened to Ilona Fedorov. Should I hear them again, of course, I shall inform you at once.
Listen, Tuka, do you mean to tell me that you heard footsteps and yet you didn't hear anyone cry out?
Yes, the empty cabin that Mr. Miller used to have between mine and Miss Fedorov's, Mr. Kendall. I can only hear anything when it happens right outside my cabin door.
Well, as usual, and just like the others, you don't have any proof that you were in your cabin during the time the killing took place.
I didn't kill her, I assure you. It's my belief that Dr. Lawler did.
What makes you think that?
She was killed with one of his surgical instruments.
Oh, yes.
And we all know how very carefully he looks after them. I remember once I was in his cabin. He had the instrument case open. I noticed then that the lock's on the case. And I noticed that he pocketed the key.
It would have been possible for anyone to steal that key, even you.
Oh, no, not without him knowing. You know, I've seen him change coats and very carefully put the key in the new one. Always the same pocket, right-hand breast pocket. Of course, it'd need an accomplished pickpocket to get at it. And whatever my past record may be, I assure you I am not, nor was I ever, a pickpocket.
So there's nothing else you can tell me?
Nothing at all. Except that if you take my advice, you'll arrest Dr. Lawler at once. Doesn't it strike you as odd that he should firstly warn you that Ilona was in danger? Oh, I mean more danger than the rest of us. And that secondly, she should be killed with a scalpel which bore only his fingerprints. And thirdly, that he should conveniently leave her side to search for the person who was supposed to be on guard last night?
Well, it does, of course.
And another thing, Mr. Kendall, what better way to throw his intended victim off her guard than by making love to her?
I would have thought the boot was on the other foot.
Perhaps.
What makes you so sure that it was Lawler and not Challoner, for instance?
Because Major Challoner is a coward.
What?
Along with the rest of the people aboard this ship, you appear to think me a fool, Mr. Kendall. I am not by any means. And my conviction all those years ago has never prevented me from using my eyes and my ears to sum people up. Major Challoner is a coward. I'm quite sure he couldn't kill anyone.
He was in the army, you know.
Was, Mr. Kendall, was, exactly. I have no doubt he once was probably a very fine soldier. Once, Mr. Kendall.
Yeah, I can't understand you, Tuka. When you came aboard the Tangmar, you were petrified with fright. What happened to change you?
It was when I saw the people who appeared not to be afraid gradually changing, gradually letting their masks slip.
Well, Tuka, I've said some pretty harsh things to you since we sailed. I find myself hoping now that you reach Jamaica.
Thank you. I still think Dr. Lawler is the man you're looking for.
I've talked with the chief already, Kendall. I don't think harping on the fact that he wasn't standing guard is going to help now.
But listen, both of you, she was killed because there was no one on guard. Can't you see that?
Aye, I can see it. Now,
we agreed that there'd be a guard on duty the whole time, every night for the remainder of the voyage.
And I'm as much to blame for forgetting that the chief had spoken to me that afternoon.
Did either of you mention to anyone that there'd be no one on duty?
well, I might have said something in the engine room. I can't say for sure. I don't have to remind you that I was in a pretty foul temper at the time.
And you both complain because I can't put my hands on the murderer. Tell me, I don't know my job. The first time I needed your cooperation...
I'm a sailor, Kendall. And last night my mind was full of my ship.
You can keep out of this, John Goddard. I'm the one who's to blame. And I'll take what's coming to me.
Well, there's nothing I can do to either of you, and you know it. We were in a storm last night, and I know the ship comes first, but... oh, what's the use?
It seems to me that instead of wasting time like this, you do better to arrest that doctor, Kendall, before anyone else gets killed.
Seems that everyone on this ship wants me to arrest Dr. Lawler.
I wouldn't go so far as that, but you've got to admit, it looks black for him.
I do admit it.
Kendall, the skipper was telling me that Peter Slavin wasn't killed by anyone on the ship, that his murderer had been arrested in England.
That doesn't matter now, Chief. What are you going to do about Lawler? That's what I want to know. You've got a watertight case. I demand that you make the arrest. I'll not have a murder...
Now, wait a minute. Everything points to Lawler, but I can't believe he's guilty.
Well, I can. And I've got the lives of 60 people to consider. He's been clever enough up to date, I grant you. But this time you've got him. You even found his fingerprints on the weapon that killed her.
You agree with the skipper, Mr. Cregan?
Unless you can come up with something else.
No, it's the time lag between when he took Challoner to his cabin and knocked on your cabin door, Chief. He could have left Challoner, gone back inside Ilona's cabin, killed her, and then rushed along to your cabin and said he was trying to find out who was on guard.
And I say he did.
And the fact that he tried to make me believe that the victims had all been killed for another reason. Revenge.
Revenge?
Yes. And I told him about the message I got from Colonel Hacking in regard to Slavin's death. Oh, by the way, I'm expecting another message from Hacking. I've sent for details of Slavin's background.
Let's deal with one thing at a time, Kendall. Dr. Lawler, are you going to arrest him or not?
Well, I'll go down and talk with him again.
I'll come with you. What about you, Cregan?
Eh? Oh, I'd better go back to the engine room. I think the skipper's right, though, Kendall. You've got the man you're looking for.
I've you to thank for it, in a way. Even though if you'd stood guard, Ilona Fedorov would still be alive. All right, Skipper, let's go.
Dr. Lawler, I thought there might be something I could do or say.
It's good of you, Miss Challoner. I can't believe it even now.
It sounds stupid, I know, but sitting here like this, why not come out on deck for a moment?
If you don't mind, I'd rather not take up your time.
I thought I might be able to help. That between us, we'd be able to come up with something that might help Dirk, Mr. Kendall, to find the murderer.
That won't bring Ilona back.
Dr. Lawler, I'm here on false pretenses anyway. I've heard what happened last night. That if my father hadn't been in here, hadn't needed your help to get back to his own cabin, then this mightn't have happened. I want you to know that I'd do anything in the world to make up for that.
Miss Challoner, Yes, come in.
Dr. Lawler, I'd like to go over... Oh, Miss Challoner, I think you'd better go back to your cabin. Do you mind?
Oh, no. I'll come back later, Doctor.
That won't be necessary, Miss Challoner.
Oh? Is there something wrong?
Sharon, please.
I will come back later, Doctor.
Martin, there's just one or two points that I'd like to get clear in my mind.
1 or 2 points be hanged. They're all clear in my mind, Kendall, and I demand that you arrest Lawler. Arrest him on suspicion of murder.
Captain Goddard was right. I had a foolproof case against Dr. Lawler. For the first time since we'd left Sydney, I could bring enough evidence to bear to obtain a conviction. But even now, I wasn't sure in my own mind that Dr. Martin Lawler was the killer I sought in this passage of the Tangmar.
All right, Kendall, what are you waiting for? Do we have to have yet another killing on my ship before you're convinced Dr. Lawler is the man you're after? I demand that you arrest him for murder.
The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Captain Goddard, you can't believe that I killed Ilona. I loved her. Can't you realize that? You've got to listen to me, Kendall. You've got to believe me.
In spite of Captain Goddard's certainty that Dr. Lawler was the murderer who'd stalked the decks of the Tangmar since we left Sydney, somehow I couldn't see the mild-mannered, withdrawn Martin Lawler in that role. There was a damaging case against him, I knew. His fingerprints on the scalpel that had been used to kill Ilona Fedorov. the fact that the scalpel belonged to him, and the time lapse between Major Challoner leaving the cabin and Lawler's arriving at Mr. Cregan's cabin. A few minutes only, but enough time for a murder to take place. But unless I came out openly against the skipper, I had little choice in the matter. And unless I took the initiative, it was pretty obvious that Captain Goddard would take action himself.
I mean it, Kendall. We've a fortnight at sea before we reach Jamaica. And that fortnight isn't going to be like the weeks we've been through. I want this matter settled now. Either arrest Lawler or turn him over to me. There are men in my crew who would like nothing better than to get their hands on you, Dr. Lawler.
But Captain Goddard...
Quiet! One more word out of you and I'll make this a personal matter. I've been through 3 weeks of hell on this ship. And you're not getting a chance to kill anyone else. Kendall, I demand that you do your duty.
Skipper, I'll guarantee that Dr. Lawler reaches Jamaica and that he'll stand trial.
I want him in custody, Kendall.
All right, Skipper. Dr. Martin Lawler, I'm holding you on suspicion of murder. I have to warn you that anything
You can
say...
cut the warning, Kendall. You're both convinced I'm guilty, so let's leave it at that.
I know you're guilty. I wish you weren't aboard the Tangmar right now, Kendall. I'd like nothing better than to handle this in my own way. Just see he doesn't get a chance to leave this cabin. I'm going to arrange for a 24-hour guard outside this door.
Skipper, wait.
There's been too much waiting. Just watch him, that's all. If he tries anything, don't pull any punches.
Well, I suppose I'm lucky that Jones is in the brig. At least I'm to have the use of my cabin. You're sure I'm guilty as well?
No, I'm not. But you're a lot better off with me handling this than being left to Captain Goddard and the crew. If they had their way, you'd be lucky to reach Jamaica alive.
You mean you arrested me for murder in order to protect me?
Partly. But you've got to admit that for the first time we've a strong case.
Except for the fact that I'm innocent.
Listen, are you sure you saw no one down here last night, apart from Major Challoner, that is?
I've told you Oh, what's the use of going over it again? I still can't believe that alone as... I just can't believe it, Kendall. It must be a dream, a nightmare.
Challoner claims he wasn't even in Miss Fedorov's cabin last night, but Duca backed up your story that the Major was drunk. Well, this morning he certainly looked like it.
Oh, for heaven's sake, man, if I was going to kill Alona, why would I wait until that moment? I'd been with her for most of the evening, apart from the few minutes I'd spent on deck and then in your cabin. And... Yes. That must have been when it happened.
What?
The scalpel. When I was on deck, or with you. Someone must have sneaked in here and taken the scalpel, knowing the key was in my jacket.
But Tuca told me you always carried the key with you.
Usually I did. But if you remember, when I came to your cabin, I was wearing a mackintosh. I'd left my jacket hanging in here, behind that door, with the key in the pocket. You saw for yourself, Kendall, when I took the mackintosh off, I wasn't wearing a jacket.
That's right.
So whoever killed Ilona must have watched my movements pretty thoroughly. Known where to look for the key to the instrument case. You say Tuca knew where I kept that key? If he did, then it's reasonable to assume that the rest of the passengers and the crew knew as well. Anyone could have come in here and taken that scalpel.
Listen, Martin, for the time being, you've got to go along with me. To all intents and purposes, you're the guilty person we've been looking for. But I'm warning you now. Even with that guard of Goddard's outside your door, you'd better watch yourself night and day.
You think I'm in danger?
I do. If you're innocent, the murderer, the real murderer of Ilona Fedorov and Blake and Miller would like nothing better than to have you out of the way before we reach Jamaica.
I don't see why.
Well, I'll tell you. A trial might prove your innocence. But if something happened to you between now and the time we dock, something accidental, it would be assumed that after an inquiry that your motive of killing had gone to the grave with you. There's enough against you now to brand you a murderer, providing you never reach a court.
I see. All right, Kendall, I'll be on my guard.
I still think all the beneficiaries under Wherryman's will are in danger, but if you were assumed guilty, and then something happened to you, the killer would be able to move against the others at his or her leisure.
Her? You mean Sharon Challoner?
Oh, I've become so used to suspecting everyone that I use that phrase more or less automatically now.
So you're still convinced that the motive is the Wherryman fortune?
No, I'm not convinced of anything, but your theory about revenge is going to be proved or disproved very soon.
No?
I'm waiting on a message from Colonel Hacking in London. I'm hoping he can supply me with information tying Peter Slavin in with someone aboard this ship. And if I can do that, Doctor, I think we're going to clear your name.
Ah. Now, steward, another glass of that excellent claret, if you please.
Yes, sir.
Oh, you know, I haven't enjoyed a meal like this since we left Sydney, Captain Goddard. Superb. It's amazing the way a feeling of security tickles the palate, don't you agree? What about you, Kendall?
What?
You know, seeing that we've found the murderer, you all seem deucedly miserable.
Well, what would you like to do, Major? Shoot him out of hand without a trial?
After all, Major Challoner, just because we think Dr. Lawler is guilty, it doesn't follow that he is.
My sentiments exactly, Mr. Tuker. I'm firmly convinced that Dr. Lawler did not kill Ilona or anyone else.
Oh, of course he did, Sharon, and what...
Couldn't we talk of something else just for once?
Can't help a certain amount of speculation, Captain Goddard.
If we can't find another topic of conversation, then I'm going to take my meals in the engine room. 4 days since Lawler was arrested, and that's all I've had. Will he hang? Will he get life? Let's shoot him out of hand. I tell you, I'm sick of it.
That's all very well, Mr. Cregan. But how do you suppose poor Martin feels locked up in his cabin? Guards outside his door, imprisoned because he was in love with Ilona.
Miss Challoner, even for a woman, that's pretty muddled thinking.
But it's true. And you'll find I'm right, all of you.
I wonder how much you believe in his innocence because it means you can stand out against me, Sharon.
Oh, Father, don't be stupid.
Well, I agree with Mr. Cregan. Let's forget it.
And talk about what? Oh, come on, Tuker. You must have had some experiences you'd care to share. Tell us about your first wife and how you...
Cut it out.
It's perfectly all right, Mr. Kendall. The Major doesn't bother me at all. Not anymore.
Anyway, I must say I'm relieved it's over. For the first time since we left Sydney, the Tangmar feels like a ship again, instead of a floating charnel house. Pass the salt, will you, Kendall?
Yeah.
We've been living under a cloud for so long. Let's have a little pleasantness for a change. That goes for you particularly, Major Challoner.
Really? Well, then perhaps you'd care to set the example, Captain. Tell us how you came to follow the sea. Enthrall us with the story of your meteoric rise from cabin boy to captain of this, battered old...
By heavens, Challoner,
Easy, Skipper.
Major Challoner, the Tangmar means more to the skipper and me than you'll ever know. And to hear a loud-mouthed landlubber calling our names is more than I can stand. I'll see you later, John. The engines might be dirty with oil, but at least it's the kind of dirt you can wash off.
Well, there's no need to take offense, Mr. Cregan.
Good night.
Well, I'll be...
It might be simpler, Major Challoner, if for the rest of this voyage you took your meals alone in your cabin.
Are you presuming to give me orders, Tuker?
No, he isn't, Challoner, but I am. You've had your last chance. I want the rest of this voyage to pass off peacefully, and I'm not standing for any more of your blasted sneers.
It's no good looking at me, Father. I feel the same way.
Do you now? The whole ship's company against me, eh? My own daughter with them. I suppose you're all sorry that you couldn't have arrested me. Would have fitted in with your plans very well, I suppose. Well, I shall continue to take my meals where I please.
Of course, we can do the same. It does appear you might rule this dining lounge in solitary splendor, doesn't it? And I know from experience you don't like to be alone, Major. So, if I were you...
But you're not, Tuker. When I want your advice, I'll ask for it.
Oh, Kendall, the wireless operator asked me to give you this. Said you were waiting for it. It's a message from London.
Oh, thanks, Cregan.
Well, now you're back, Mr. Cregan. You might as well finish your dinner in peace, don't you agree?
I'm not hungry anymore.
But this is...
Something wrong, Kendall?
Yes, Captain Goddard, there is.
What is it, Dirk?
Don't spoil his little moment, Sharon. Policemen enjoy this kind of suspense.
I might as well tell you now, all of you, that I was expecting this message from Colonel Hacking to clear Dr. Lawler.
What?
Yes, Skipper. I wired Hacking, asking him to give me full particulars on Peter Slavin's background, thinking that if I could tie him in with someone aboard this ship, I might have something to work on. But according to this message, there's nothing. In spite of what any of us think, it Seems the case against Dr. Lawler is stronger than ever. I had hoped desperately that Colonel Hacking would be able to give me the lead I needed so badly. That the beneficiaries under Victor Wherryman's will had been killed by someone who'd known Peter Slavin and killed for revenge. But the slip of paper in my hand had tied the noose tighter around Dr. Lawler's neck in this passage of the Tangmar.
Dirk, you're wrong, and we both know it. I don't care what you say. Dr. Lawler did not kill Ilona Fedorov. I know how he felt about her. While you're sure that you found the man you were looking for, the murderer, the real murderer, is sitting back and laughing at you.
The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
You might just as well have arrested Mr. Tuker or my father. Neither of them have alibis for the time of Ilona's death. For that matter, neither do I. Why did it have to be Dr. Lawler, Dirk? Why arrest him and make Ilona's death even harder for him to bear?
It was the morning after I'd received Colonel Hacking's message from London, saying that no one on the Tangmar had any relationship with Peter Slavin. I'd come off watch at midday, and as I left the bridge, I found Sharon Challoner waiting for me. Her certainty that Dr. Lawler was innocent only strengthened my own doubts. But she wasn't aware that if I hadn't placed Dr. Lawler under arrest, he would have been a lot worse off than he was now. Panama was not more than a few days sailing away, providing the Tangmar kept her schedule. And after Panama, Jamaica and Savannah Lamar and the Wherryman fortune for the survivors of the voyage. Sharon Challoner had changed a lot, and in the warm sunlight she looked anything but the shy, withdrawn girl who'd come aboard with her father in Sydney.
Well, haven't you anything to say, Dirk? Are you going to sit back and let an innocent man be charged? Because you want this case to be closed?
Oh, I want it to be closed, all right. I can't wait to be clear of the Tangmar, to be back in London living in some kind of sanity.
And to do that, you'd let Dr. Lawler go to the wall?
Sharon, let's get one thing straight between us. Quite apart from the evidence against him, I had a very good reason for arresting Dr. Lawler.
You mean you think he's innocent?
As it happens, I do. And if you must know, Dr. Lawler is risking his life to help me. It's my belief that the real murderer won't want him to reach Jamaica alive. Well, he's down there in his cabin knowing that any moment our killer might make a move against him.
So that's the reason for the guards on his door?
Not completely. That was Captain Goddard's idea.
But why should the murderer want him out of the way? With the evidence you've got against the doctor, I should have thought a trial would be simply a formality.
The murderer wouldn't think that because he knows his own guilt. But with Dr. Lawler out of the way, enough of the mud might stick to him to establish his guilt. He wouldn't be able to prove his innocence.
And Martin knows the danger he's in?
Yes. If only my hunch about Slavin had paid off. I was sure that Hacking would give me the information I wanted. And instead of that, nothing. No connection between Slavin and anyone aboard.
Somehow Ilona's death seemed so much worse than the others. She and Martin had found something in each other that was... Well, I know I'd like to have found what they had.
How are things with your father now?
An armed neutrality. I think he hopes that by drinking too much, he'll make me feel as though I'm to blame. Make me agree to stay with him.
Sharon, when all this is over, when I do get back to London, I'd like to see you again.
Please don't say that if you just feel sorry for me.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not nearly the stiff upper-lipped character I tried to pretend to be, you know, but in my line of country, my work for Interpol, it's always been better to go it alone. If you know what I mean.
Why?
Well, Colonel Hacking frowns a little on married agents. Well, not that I was... Well, you see, he's a dyed-in-the-wool bachelor and feels that... I'd better be getting along, Sharon. I want to have a word with Dr. Lawler and make sure that everything's all right. I'm glad you feel the same way about it.
I'm going to find your murderer for you, Dirk. I'm going to find him before anything happens to you.
Sorry, Mr. Kendall, sir. Captain's orders. No one allowed in to see the doctor without he gives the order.
Either get that door open, Watson, or I'll break it open.
But we're only doing what the captain wants.
Get out of my way, both of you.
But, Mr. Kendall, sir, Oh, here's Captain Goddard now.
Sir, we see, Watson.
Skipper, what's the idea? Dr. Lawler is my prisoner, and I'm entitled to see him whenever I wish.
Providing I know about it first, yes. All you got to do is come and ask me, Kendall.
But why?
I just want to make sure that no one gets it into their head to let Dr. Lawler out of there.
What, do you think that I...
You don't think he's guilty, I know that. Well, I do. I'm making sure that Dr. Lawler is around to answer charges when we reach port.
Oh, but for Pete's sake.
All right, you can open it up, Watson.
Yes, sir.
We've got quite a way to go yet, Dirk. There's not going to be any more trouble on my ship.
When did you decide to take this action?
Last night, when you got that message from Colonel Hacking. As far as I was concerned, that was Lawler's last chance to prove his innocence. He's guilty, and you know it. And for 2 pins, I'd have him in the brig with Jones.
There we are, sir.
Are you coming in, Skipper?
No, thanks. The less I see of that murdering swine between here and Jamaica, the better I like it. Remember what I said, Watson?
Yes, sir. Whew. The old man sure is in a foul temper.
I'll yell when I want to come out. All right. Lock it up. You hear that, Martin?
I heard.
Cigarette?
No, thanks. I don't suppose you found out anything, have you?
Nothing that would help.
I'd pinned my faith on that message from Colonel Hacking. Now it only makes it look as though I was trying to drag a red herring across the trail, inventing a motive that would implicate somebody else.
I know. Had any visitors?
For 5 days I've been locked in this cabin. If it wasn't for you, I might as well be dead. 5 days, Kendall, while my mind races along the one line. Who killed her and why? Why alone her? Who used my key to get that scalpel? Anyway, it doesn't matter anymore. I've made up my mind that I'll hang for a crime I didn't commit, and I don't even care. Did you say something about visitors?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Sharon Challoner came to the door. I heard her arguing with the guards outside, and they wouldn't let her in. Oh, and Mr. Cregan, the chief engineer.
Cregan? What did he want?
He just sang out through the door, said he was going to make sure that nothing happened to the engines between here and Jamaica.
Why, that old... Anything else?
Yes, he said that you were trying to prove that Peter Slavin's death had nothing to do with the passengers, but that he and Captain Goddard knew differently.
It was Cregan who brought me the message from the wireless operator, the message from Hacking. I think maybe I'll show Cregan Colonel Hacking's message about Slavin. The first one, telling me that he'd caught Slavin's killer.
What good will that do?
It might stop the old buzzard pestering you.
He probably thinks you faked the message anyway.
Faked? Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
What's wrong?
I've got an idea, Martin. It's probably crazy, but so is everything else about this case. All right, Watson, let me out.
But I don't see what...
You're not meant to yet. Just start praying, Martin. This time I've a feeling we're on the right track.
You all right, sir?
Yes, fine, Watson. I'm going to have a word with Sparks, Martin. A word I should have had with him last night.
Weather clear, sea slight. Come in. Ah, hello, Kendall. What can I do for you?
About that report you handed to Mr. Cregan last night.
Yeah, bit of a change, that, from these blasted weather reports.
You remember what it said?
Well, don't you? Anyway, what do you mean last night? I gave that to Mr. Cregan early yesterday afternoon.
Well, he gave it to me over dinner last night.
Suppose the old coot forgot it. You know it's Cregan's last voyage. Wouldn't have made this one if the skipper hadn't persuaded him. Thought it'd be a piece of cake, passengers instead of cargo. Well, pretty indigestible cake, if you ask me.
What did the message from Colonel Hacking say?
I've got a copy of it here somewhere. Wait a minute.
Well, you always take a copy, do you?
Of course I do. Got to cover myself in case there's any kickbacks, haven't I? Anyway, all copies have to be handed into Blake's at the end of the voyage. That's funny. It should be here, but it isn't.
Sparks, can you remember what it said?
Look, what's this all about? I handed the thing to Mr. Cregan. If you got it, why question me?
Just tell me what it said.
Look, I get hundreds of wireless messages every day. And if I could remember what every one of them said, then I'd have a photographic mind.
Yes, but you just said it was a change from weather reports.
All right, as it happens, I suppose I can remember it. It was something about a bloke called Slavin. That right?
Peter Slavin. I told you I wanted details of his background when you sent my query to Colonel Hacking.
Yeah, that's right. Well, as far as I can remember, his reply stated there was no connection with anyone aboard.
Are you sure?
Well, why should there be? No one by the name of Slavin on this ship.
You mean that this was the actual message?
You had it all the time. What you ask me for? You're feeling all right, Mr. Kendall?
And that was the message you gave to Cregan to give me, huh?
Yeah, of course it was.
Well, then suppose you answer one question, Sparks. Why is it that this is the one message you don't have a copy of? And why did Mr. Cregan wait until dinner time before handing me a message you say you gave him early yesterday afternoon? I'd had very little to do with the wireless operator on the Tangmar. He was a shifty-eyed fellow in his early 20s, and his name was Mulcahy. He sat at his desk watching me as the Morse code started clicking again in this passage of the Tangmar.